to start off with a little intro, everybody. Have a small group so we can definitely have some time at the end for questions, I think. So I wanted to, obviously first thank everybody for attending, and of course our three speakers who are here today. I'm going to do a little intro for each, and then we'll get started with our first speaker with Edith. So let's bring up, there you go. Just want to introduce Shelley. Oh, a couple more, hold on. All right. So just want to introduce Shelley Piedmont. She's a dynamic career coach with expertise in talent acquisition. She helps empower individuals to thrive professionally. Her personalized coaching covers career clarity, job search strategy, interviewing and optimizing resumes and LinkedIn profiles. And through her website, mycareergps.com, Shelley equips job seekers with modern tools and strategies to navigate today's competitive job market. And that intro was generated by ChatGPT, so not bad. And our next speaker is Virginia Franco, an executive resume writer, generating interviews for 99% of her clients within 60 days. Virginia's credentials include being one of the few national certified resume writers, holding the NCOPE certification, and having served as a president of the National Resume Writers Association. She's recognized by JobScan as a top job search expert to follow on LinkedIn. And our first speaker for today is Edith, a seasoned career and executive coach, bringing over 25 years of a diverse experience in financial advising, fundraising, education, and mentoring. Inspired by her own career transition, she developed an award-winning coaching program, Fast Track to Your Dream Job, aiming to effectively navigate professionals' career paths. Recognized as a top LinkedIn coach and a Tory Burch Foundation grant recipient, Edith is dedicated to empowering individuals and helping them with their career aspirations. So we're going to get started here with Edith as a speaker. We have a few slides for her. Every speaker is doing their own thing in terms of how they're presenting. So we may do slides or we may do just off the cuff. We'll see how we're going to approach it. With Edith, we do have a presentation for a few slides here. And Edith, you are mute. Let me know when you want to switch the slides since I'm the one hosting.
Hello and welcome. It's a delight to be here today. I'm Edith, and I'm excited to share with you my thoughts on the power of skills and impact. And I want to give a little bit of context for this. And the context is based on the kind introduction from John. After a 20-plus year career path in 4 different industries, and leading after that to a 2+ year job search / career transition, a very frustrating, I will say, of monstrous challenges on many levels. And it led me to potentially rip apart the whole job search process and find out what aspects of it I was not performing as optimally as I would have liked to, based on past positions, past jobs coming so quickly for me. So as I ripped apart the process and then figured out what I was doing wrong, I took what I learned, and from that I created the Fast Track to Your Dream Job program, with the thought that I wanted to make sure that nobody ever had to go through this horrific experience that I went through over the 2+ years. And today, the foundation of what that program is built on is what I'm going to focus on today. And in terms of a successful job search, the key components of that focus on the skills and the impact. And this applies to, as myself having gone through it, this applies to folks who are in multiple industries throughout their career, as well as someone who's had a multi-year, like myself, job search process, in addition to someone who has been in a position in the company that's misaligned, the culture completely off, different tangent from where they want to be. They've lost the inspiration, lost the hope, lost the excitement. they're essentially no longer leveraging the skills, the passions, and talent that they had to begin with. And typically, this has to do entirely with company corporate culture alignment. So the very first step that I like to reflect on is realizing that we all have enormous talent, enormous skills. Going from that basis, most people come into the process feeling a bit of imposter syndrome and not realizing just how powerful their skills are. So once that realization is there, the next step of the process is recognizing your abundant skills, your talents, which then lead you to have an impact. Because we all know, however many years you've been doing what you've been doing, especially if it's been several industries, you've done a lot, tangible, qualitatively or quantitatively, and all of those direct you toward making an impact. You've made a tangible difference in companies and have provided value. Once you realize and understand what that is, it's then positioning that impact, the enthusiasm, the passion, those skills with an organization whose values, whose culture, whose goals and missions is entirely aligned with your goals, your skills, and missions. And in many cases, that's the part of the this formula of how to make it all work, how to create that success story. And that success story comes back to, between the realization, the recognition, and the positioning, the answer to three questions, these three basic questions. Number one, knowing exactly what you love to do. And when you know what you love to do, knowing that you excel in that. And those two pieces don't always come together. There's a lot of things we love to do, doesn't mean we excel in it. There's also a lot of things we're really great at, but that doesn't mean we enjoy doing it. When we find those skills in that area where those two intersect, then the third layer, the very important layer to add on to that, is finding the corporate culture that aligns with our values and that recognizes and cherishes the skills, the expertise, and the credentials we bring to the table. So once we have the answer to those three pieces, then we move forward, and of the four-step process in determining, taking advantage of the strength and the power of the skills and impact. The first piece of that is, and I believe that would be the next slide, please. So the first piece of that is we review the resume, getting a sense, reminding ourselves of the skill sets and the talents we have. And one of the exercises that I do in my program is reminding professionals, what are the 5 key impacts, the 5 key notable achievements you've done throughout your career path? This will serve as a very important reminder that will be reiterated both throughout the interview process, as well as in your resume, LinkedIn profile, and cover letter. And being very, very firm and solid about what really brings you excitement, what are you enthusiastic and passionate about sharing with your audience, and these are the areas that you're going to be emphasizing during your interview. Next, please. So the role of transferable skills and executive function skills. This is especially important for individuals who've had a career path in multiple industries. There's a lot you've done, and being able to target and emphasize and reiterate over and over again, connecting to the job description, to what the company is looking for, all the ways that you've been able to accomplish what they're looking for in the job description, but focusing on 2 to 3 specific examples of what you've done. And this goes back again to really knowing your resume and knowing what your impact has been. So as you've gone back and reviewed and know what those 2 or 3 examples are, you're going to be emphasizing that during your interview and during your presentation. And incorporating that, reiterating that with the strength where the skills and the passion comes from is when you're excited and proud about those achievements, your entire body language and the way in which you talk about it, the way you describe it, it takes center stage during the interview. Next, please. And equally important in this also is, this comes back to, from the realization of knowing you have this immense talent, you go into the interview with this power, this strength, this confidence, and this power gives you the ability to communicate that you know what you're good at, you know what areas you're looking to explore, and as you communicate with this, as you communicate this with the company, that gives you a sense of knowing that you're in charge here. And by being in charge, your step in that conversation is exploring how is the company showing you, the hiring manager, the interview committee, how are they demonstrating to you that their company, their culture can align with your goals? because only when that company culture is aligned and they appreciate the talent and the credentials you bring to the table, they understand as you start talking about the impact and how what they're looking for in the job description matches the passion, the impact, and the essential achievements you've done over the years. Those two match together. That gives you the strength and the power to know that this is a two-way direction, a two-way street. You have to be just as excited hearing about what they're telling you about their alignment as they are in hearing about your impressive history. And among the questions to ask that puts you in control is very much focusing on finding out about the team, learning about the culture, and especially I like to advise my clients on, especially asking about what kind of challenges has the team faced, what kind of challenges has the company faced. And the response you get to that is very telling on, is this the kind of organization based on how they're approaching their employees, based on how they're approaching their clientele, is this the kind of culture you want to be a part of? Next, please. And of course, what works importantly with that piece is that as you're having this dialogue, learning more about the company and understanding if this exploration is a solid direction for you to go in, they have to be impressing you too. They have to feel as though they need to persuade you that, okay, what we have to offer based on what you're bringing to us, this enormous talent, this incredible impact, and these examples of these tangible, qualitative/quantitative, what can we say that can impress you and persuade you that we're the team you want to join and we're the team where you can make a difference? And especially, most important of all, they truly value your expertise, your passion. And many people can get job offers, but when they ask me, well, which job offer do I accept? I always tell them the organization that rolls out the red carpet and illustrates to you, demonstrates very tangibly the reasons why they appreciate what you bring to the table. Many companies don't go that extra step, and the ones that do really make you feel that you're special, they appreciate you and cherish you, that makes a huge deal. And it goes back again to having the power of where your skills and impact lay. Next, please. And finally, I would say the most important step of all is, and this is where the confidence, understanding what you bring to the table, and understanding how you present yourself, the most important part of the interview process that's coming from you is when they ask the question, tell me about yourself. There's a very deep process, a deep sense of both what are your skill sets that you're bringing to the table, the number of years in which you've been doing your work, your profession, and especially if there's been many different career paths, many different industries involved. And specifically those examples, going back to that impact and going back to the talent and the passion you have. What are those few examples that you can share, very quick examples that tie into whatever's on that job description, what they're focusing on? How can you link yourself up and showcase and demonstrate right there, here's how I've already done what you're asking me to do. And that statement there, of course, with charisma, excitement, exuberance, but in the exploratory phase of here's what I've done, but now I want to hear, what can you do for me? How can you recognize and realize my talents so I know that I'm making a good choice in pursuing this? And okay, and career vision as well, to also highlight toward the end of this piece, this brief introduction, make sure you incorporate in there your vision for your future, where you want to go with the joy, and with also, this is the part where going back to recognizing the immense talent you have, the joys you've had in making the difference in the companies. This is where you get to express the direction you want to go in. Next, please. And we know this phase, there's so much more. This is really a tight blueprint of what's part of the program for the job search of success in the future. And there's so much more, of course, to talk about this. So I'm offering to all individuals who would like to take advantage after our event today of a complimentary 20-minute phone consult with me to share with me what your challenges are within the skills and the impact area, and would love to help you move to the next level of your career path and get that dream job, and doing so by making sure all these 4 components are being implemented properly. And I appreciate your attention, and thank you so much, and would love to introduce Virginia.
All right, thank you.
Well, I didn't. Okay.
Sorry. Next up is Virginia, and I think you wanted to do a little different scenario for your presentation, right?
Yes, I am not a fan of preparing presentations, only because I find that more often than not, people just have a ton of individual questions related to a lot of their career marketing collateral, which is where I come in. And so I wanted to just give a really brief introduction and then open the floor to specific questions related to resume and LinkedIn writing. To give you just a brief background, I've been writing resumes since the dawn of day. When I first got out of school, I wrote them for free for years, but my degree's in journalism. So while I was doing them for free, I was using my degree to write for newspapers, magazines, websites, a little bit of everything. And what I learned from all of that is that when people are in a rush, they all read the same way. And so I apply a lot of the principles that I learned in journalism to help people write for the news, or read and write for the news, to career documents. As Edith mentioned in her presentation, there are a lot of different places in the job search process, or the job search journey, where bottlenecks can happen. You've got the first phase, which is sort of getting clear on what your career target is, what you want to do, the kind of company you want to do it with, what are sort of deal breakers for you, all of that. Then there is the piece where you have to create your marketing collateral to support your job search, writing your resume, writing your LinkedIn profile, writing your cover letter. That's where I come in. Then other areas where I offer anecdotal support, but I don't specialize it necessarily, is, interview support to get you from that initial screen all the way through to the final offer. And then there is negotiations at the very end to close out and hopefully land your job. But as I said, I focus on stage 2, which is the career marketing collateral. There are a lot of best practices that I employ, but there's a lot of strategy involved in resume and LinkedIn writing. Everyone's situation is different. There's unique challenges. And so what I'd love to do is open up the floor to any specific or general questions that you might have, that I can help you write your own resume and LinkedIn profile. To sound like a third grade teacher, yeah. No questions are silly.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. The thing that I've struggled with the most in my resume is demonstrating value and quantifying accomplishments. It's like I can tell you what I've done, but it is so very hard for me to quantify it and toot my own horn in terms of the value I bring. Any tips on that would be really helpful.
Yes. Well, number one, I want to applaud you for recognizing that it is important to be clear on what your achievements are. I see so many resumes, and I'm sure Shelley and Edith can affirm that we see a lot of documents where people just sort of do a laundry list of all of their responsibilities. That does not distinguish you. It doesn't make you memorable, and it doesn't tell your story. What I like to do to help my clients to identify what their achievements are, that I think might help you. To me, I treat each job like an HGTV before and after story. So ask yourself, what did things look like when you first came to the company, to the role? And then sort of fast forward and think about, what were things like when you left, or as you're preparing to leave? And then write down what your role was in getting things from point A to point B. Once you have that, then I encourage you to take an extra step and say, well, what was the impact? Why was that path from point A to point B so important to the company, to the team, to the customer? And your answers to those questions are going to be what you use to formulate your bullet. For a lot of women, sort of share your sentiments where they feel like they're bragging and they don't really know. They struggle to articulate it in a way that feels authentic. And so what I often say is, when you have done that exercise and you're able to back up your successes with some facts and some details, then it doesn't really feel like bragging anymore. It feels like you're just telling a brief story of how you move things from point A to point B. Does that help?
It's very helpful.
Okay.
And we're going to get a recording and a copy of this. Yes, I hope.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I see that a couple other questions. Let's see. Oh gosh, a lot of them. Okay. Are bullet points really the bane of all hiring managers? To me, dense text, which can mean death by a million bullets, that is the bane of any online reader. Think about when you are looking at a document online or on your phone. When you see a bunch of text all crammed together, big fat paragraphs that are 4 or 5 lines long, your eyes sort of glaze over and you want to fight to either close out the document or print it. That's why terms and conditions on websites are I think, so jam-packed with information. They make for a really difficult skim read, and we are talking about skim readers always. The principles that I follow to keep documentation sort of neat and easy to follow quickly, I keep my bullets and paragraphs to 2 to 3 lines. I add a little bit of white space, maybe 0.5 points at least on using Microsoft Word in between every bullet and every paragraph. And then if I have more than 5 bullets, I like to break them down into subcategories, sort of group them together. And that formatting tends to facilitate that skim online read that we're dealing with, and it makes documents really easy to read on mobile devices, which is, something that we are dealing with. And the good thing is that they also convey well to print. John, I hope you'll tell me when it's time to turn things over to Shelley. The next question was how to advise older job seekers currently on the market. My answer to that is, number one, to present formatting that is super current and relevant, the format that works for you in the 20th century, and certainly, earlier than 10 years ago, needs a refresh, in my view, primarily because we're dealing with people that are looking at these documents on screens where we, again, don't digest dense text really easily, and we also tend to jump around quite a bit. If you have experience that's much older than the last 15 years, which is 2009 right now, what I do is I'll create an earlier experience section where I synopsize what is relevant about that role. And I'll remove the dates for the human reader to see. And what that enables the reader to do is see what experience is pertinent to your current target. And so it allows you to not negate that experience, but reference it in a way that doesn't take up as much real estate. And then if it's super, super relevant, I'll even reference it in the summary paragraph at the top. Let's see. I'm sort of going through this quick. Thoughts on hybrid resumes. If you have 2 different non-contiguous consulting periods. So professional experience versus consulting experience. David, I am not a fan of hybrid resumes if you can avoid them, because people that are skim reading get lazy and they like to read things in beginning, middle, and end sort of storytelling format. So what I tell people to do when they are in consulting capacities is to potentially, instead of explaining every single project you've been on, identify a few consulting engagements that are emblematic of the kinds of problems you solve, create a consulting role, and then your bullets would be sort of mini case studies related to those engagements. And so you're sort of creating like a job experience. Let's see. I love recommendations to adjust for ATS-friendly formats. That's a good question, Priya. A lot of people ask that. ATS is really just a filing system that helps recruiters and hiring managers to file and store all of the hundreds of resumes that they are getting. It does not auto-reject documents. There are over 300 different systems, and all of them have slight differences, but the commonality is that many of them can't read. If you submit something in a Microsoft Word document, it can't read anything in a text box. It can't read anything in a header or a footer. And then everything else, you're pretty good. I always keep in mind it's more important to write for the human than the ATS, because there are human beings at the other end of the machines that are reading your information. I think one of the reasons the myth came about that ATS rejects resumes is that these ATS systems enable people can program knockout questions into the system. Knockout questions are often sort of must-have requirements. So if you need a specific certification in order to do this role, and the job posting says must have this X, Y, and Z certification, if you don't have it, the ATS has been programmed to reject someone that failed that qualification. So I encourage people to go to job postings, look for must-have requirements, and make sure that you do not submit your resume unless you meet those. So I just talked a lot. I'm sure it's Shelley's turn. So I will be back for additional questions at the end.
All right. Well, we're good on time, so no worries there, Virginia, but we'll pass to Shelley to continue on with her section here, and she'll be going over interviewing.
Okay, I have some slides, so if you want to make me presenter.
I think I've given you co-host, so.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That'll make it so much easier. So let's go ahead and do that.
You know if it works.
Well, we'll soon know quickly.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. Technology, it's great. Now I'm going to cross my fingers that my microphone works because in the middle of Virginia's talk, it went out. So crossing my fingers, we got that fixed. So hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, maybe good evening, wherever you are. I'm going to talk today about interviewing specifically, and I call this cracking the code because I want you to know what you need to think about as you are preparing for your interviews. So just a little bit about me and why I know about interviews is because I was a former recruiter. Did that for many, many years. And I have hired, everything from entry level to senior leaders. And I have worked in Fortune 100 companies. I've worked in small businesses, everything in between. So I feel like I have seen it pretty much all. So what I want to do today is start by talking about what it is that hiring team is concentrating on in the interviews, what you should be aware of as you are preparing. So I want to talk about the hiring criteria. What is important to them that you should be aware of? Well, the first thing is, can you do the job? That is pretty obvious that would be important to them. It's not the only thing, but it's an important thing. And when we break this down, there's actually several things that they are looking for when they're looking for, can you do the job? So, do you have specialized training? Now, for some jobs, it's going to be a requirement. You have to go to law school to be a lawyer. You have to go to medical school to be a doctor. But in many circumstances, it is not necessarily required, but it could be a want to have for them. So a CFO may need to have gone to getting a master's in business, for example, or they're looking for somebody who potentially has a certification in a specific area. So that could be important to them. They may want to have somebody who has specific knowledge base. So that can be because they think that person who has it will be better at the job. Maybe it's a new job, and so no one there has that experience, can't train it. Or maybe they just don't have the bandwidth to train people. So they're looking for somebody who can come in with a specific knowledge. An example might be somebody who has international banking knowledge, for example, if that's something that's important in the role. And then relevant experience is important. So what that is going to be dependent upon that employer, but oftentimes when someone has done something similar or in the realm, of what it is, they feel like that person actually has expectations that may be better in line for what the role might be. So as an example, I like to use, if they're doing some acquisitions, then having some M&A experience would be in there. And then specific skills. So things that are really important maybe for that particular role. So it could be that if that role is going to be working with many departments, and therefore they're going to need to get things from those departments, they may need to have some good influencing skills because they have to get those departments to decide that they're going to help them because the other departments have their own agenda. So that's some things to think about. And then at the executive level, this could be higher level skills or skills that are current for the situation that we have currently. So as an example, that could be dealing with uncertainty because of the economy or political situations. It could be dealing with multiple generations in an organization. It could be working with a remote team or a hybrid team. It could be, how do we get all our innovation to make money? So those are things to think about under, can you do the job? But as I said, this isn't the only thing that they're thinking about. So the second thing that they're likely looking at is, do you want the job? Everybody who is hiring wants somebody who wants their job, and not just a job. So how can you show that you want the job? Well, through your enthusiasm. So that can be how you come across in the interviews. Are you friendly? Are you smiling? Do you show enthusiasm with your body language? How about your motivation? Why this job? Why not another job? Can you explain it so that that hiring team understands why this job would be good for you? And this also helps them to understand if they can provide what you need. And interest. So how interested are you in the job? Some clues for the hiring team can be, how much research have you done? Are you well versed in what the organization does? Are you asking good questions in the interview to show your interest? Those would be things that they are looking for under, do you want a job? And then there is even another criteria they're looking for. And is, do you fit the team or the culture? So we probably all know somebody who might have been good at the job. They may have wanted the job, but they would not fit in the culture, or they experienced where they have not fit in the culture. And that can be very destabilizing for the team. So hiring teams are really always looking at this. So they would be looking at values. Do your values meet their values? So if their values are integrity, do you show honesty? Do you show transparency? Or maybe innovation? Are you a risk taker? Are you creative? They might want to know about that. How about your work style? That's your approach and your behaviors. So if they want somebody who is collaborative because they have a collaborative work style or culture, then they're going to want to understand your work style. Maybe they want more independence. They don't care about collaboration. They just want people who will get results. They want to know about that. And the last thing is your personality. So that's your traits, your attributes, and your behaviors. So maybe from a personality standpoint, they want somebody who can come into that team that's going to be full of energy, can do, and inspire the team. That could be something. Or they want somebody that's calm and diplomatic, who can make the drama go down, that can deal with conflict. So they may be looking at that as part of team culture. So don't forget, it's not about just that you can do the job, but do you want the job and do you fit in the team and the culture? So thinking through that prism, what you want to do is think about what is it you bring to that employer. So I know Edith was talking about that. So let's go through some of the things you might want to think about as you're preparing. And these would be things that you would want to write down or list. First of all, your knowledge, your education, certifications. So knowledge could be technical knowledge, knowledge about the role. It could be knowledge about the products and services, about the industry, or even about the organization. It can also be your strengths, and those are your innate abilities that often we're born with, that the other people around us are just amazed that we can do these things. When you work in your strengths, you actually are more productive and more engaged. So you could be a ideator. You just come up with lots and lots of ideas. Or maybe your strength is discipline. You just put order to chaos. Whatever that is, you want to make sure that you know what you can bring to that role. Skills, that's a little bit different than strengths. Skills are things that we learn over time. So skills could be that you are a good mediator, or you're a good negotiator, or that you're a good strategizer. So you want to write those all down. And then we have personality-based interests. So we all kind of gravitate towards certain things, and this could be very important depending on the role. So if you are kind of a social personality, then you tend to gravitate toward those roles and those industries where you would be working with others and helping others. And that could be a very good alignment. You might be more of a investigative type. I'll say that again. An investigative type that you like to analyze, you like to research, you like to problem solve. So that would be something that you would want to be aware of, and that could be of value. And then lastly, I put in their values. So we talked about aligning them. So what are your values? What is important to you? And how does that look with that particular organization? Okay, so you've got your list. Now we're going to look at what that employer is going to value, because what's important for their hiring decision is not that you have an experience. The important part is that experience is relevant to what they need. So what are you going to look at? You're going to look at the job description. You're going to look through that very carefully, and then you're going to say, what does it tell me here? What have they said are important for the role? What are the requirements for the role? What are the role duties? And what does that say about what they need? You want to make sure you catalog that. And then your company research. So that's going to include, what does the company do? What is their business? What are their products? What is their competition? What are the problems that they're facing? What are the opportunities? That can include talking to people within the organization and them giving you some ideas of what they would value. So you've got what you can bring, you've got an idea of what they value, and what you're going to do next is you're going to look at that alignment, okay? So you want to know, where do you match up? Because in the interview, that is what you want to talk about. It's not about what you want to say. I always say that. It's not about what you want to say. It's what they need to hear. So how you meet the role requirements. Have you done anything similar? Those keywords that you see, how does that align to you? And values. You want to write down everything that matches. That's important. Then you want to leverage storytelling in how you're conveying that information. Storytelling is really powerful. I know that Virginia is going to agree with me on this one. How we tell stories is how we engage with people. You can remember stories much better than a lot of data. So when you are thinking about, okay, how am I going to talk about my experiences, my values? Think about how you can tell a story that conveys that. The stories, as I said, engage. They build an emotional connection. And it is a great way to provide information in a way that makes the complex simple. Okay, so there are some methods to help with how to tell your personal stories. So we include these different ways to think about how I might tell my particular value story. So we have CAR. So that is the beginning is your challenge, the middle is your action, and the end is your result. And I want to emphasize the result part because as an interviewer, I can tell you lots of people start with the challenge and what they did, but they forget the ending of the story. We always want to have that ending. The STAR kind of template gives a little bit more context around the beginning. It talks about the situation that you found yourself in, and then the task can be either what was assigned to you or what you decided to do. Action here can be a little bit different because sometimes what we think we're going to do and what we end up doing may be a little bit different. So you may need to explain that a little bit. The last one, the share, depending on the situation, this can be a really effective way of storytelling because the end of that is you provide an evaluation. So it's an opportunity for you to go into what your learnings are. So hiring teams generally love it when you have had a particular experience, and then you think about it and you say, wow, based on this experience, I got this result, but if I was to do it next time, I might do something different, or I did do something different the next time it happened. So you might want to try, as you're thinking about how to convey your value, using storytelling and these different templates to help you. If you do these things, what will happen is that you will stand out among your competition. You will be able to convey your value, and then you will be able to relate to that team, giving them the information to know that you are a lower risk candidate for them to bring on. That will improve your chances of actually getting that offer you want. So John, you want to take it away?
All right. Well, thanks for that, Shelley. That was great. And I like the part about, the low risk candidate piece, because I think a lot of talent acquisition teams will try to hire exactly the same role, exactly the same person. And unless you sort of give your value and differentiation, they may just, they're going to sort of hedge towards the low risk option usually. And it's hard to do that. Like I know with us, for example, we have a lot of candidates we present where the first knee-jerk reaction from the hiring manager is, did they do the exact job we're hiring for before? Right? You hear that a lot. And the way to sort of get around that is to really show the value and how a lot of people's skills are transferable, right? So appreciate that piece. So everybody, we still have some time. I wanted to open it up for the floor for any questions at all for anybody on the panel. We have about 10 minutes here, so fire away. And if you can direct your question to who you'd like to answer, or if multiple people want to answer, that's fine. We'll go from there. Right now, the first question I think is for Shelley.
Okay, do you find mixing the storytelling methods is helpful during the interview or keep the same format for consistency? That's a very good question, Janet. And what I would tell you is it is somewhat going to be a strategic decision based on the particular questions that are asked. And what you kind of get a sense is their important hot buttons. So when you start, you may start with a star kind of format, but then as you're hearing what they're saying, maybe they're emphasizing learning. And then you think, well, okay, next time I talk about something, I'm going to provide that evaluation part in the in my answer. So I think it's okay to mix them up. I think you just choose the best one for that particular question that you think will get you the best result.
Thank you.
I think there's one more from David right above that, Shelley.
Okay. Regarding interest relative to preparation, there's often conflicting advice between you should prepare for 100 hours to demonstrate interest versus the need to manage your emotions over investment in the specific job and maintain other concurrent activities. What's your perspective on balance? You know, that is a very good question. You sometimes see people say, well, I do, 40 hours of prep for an interview. And then your initial reaction might be, well, I could never do 40 hours of prep for an interview. Then I must not be competitive. And so I would caution you from that. Your prep should be the amount of time it takes you to feel confident that you are able to articulate your value proposition. Okay. Now, I do suggest as part of your job search that you practice some of this weekly, even daily. And that way you might practice answering a particular question that you commonly might get, such as, tell me about yourself, or let me start. Not tell me about yourself, or tell me about your greatest weaknesses. A question I dislike, but people often get. So if you know that those are the type of questions you routinely will get in interviews, why not spend some time early in your process getting comfortable answering those? So you can, again, go through all the list of what you bring to the type of role that you're interested in and start practicing that. So that what happens is when it comes time for you actually to do the interview, your time that you're spending is less on how to answer the questions, but more about what you need to know about this organization or the interviewers to understand what their hot buttons are, so that kind of the topics that you want to touch on, and maybe a little bit about how you want to present yourself. I think that's probably how to better spend your time.
Sounds good. Is there any other questions? Oh, here's one from Whitney.
Okay, question. What is the best way to talk about or frame having been laid off and the subsequent, sometimes extended period of job searching afterwards? Okay, so the good thing for those that have been laid off is that has become more common, as well as we have had in the news many companies announce layoffs. So the fact that you have been laid off should not surprise people, that many companies have shed employees, not because the employee was a poor performer, but just because they they've looked at their internal operations and have decided that they don't need necessarily the staff that they had in that particular area. So the good part is that many people who have done hiring are aware of the situation. The other part is many of them have been part of a layoff as well. So they understand those circumstances. So that's a great thing that we find now in the job market. That is, there's less of a stigma with that. Now, just looking for a job, that is really dependent on so many factors, that how fast you get a job. So I would not dwell so much on that. But what you can do in your interviews, if you feel like it is something that brings value, talk about what you maybe have done during that time that is probably a positive for an employer. Maybe you went and got additional certifications, or you took a course or something like that. If that happened to you and that makes sense for that particular employer, that's something I might talk about, and they may think that as a real positive.
Great.
Sorry,
I think we had a few questions there, Virginia, for you that we missed. One was from Kara that asked about having photos on resumes, and another one from Priya, I believe, about the length of a resume. What was recommended?
Sure. I'm happy to answer those. I'd love to just tag on really briefly to what Shelley was talking about in terms of how to write about your layoff. If it's a recent layoff, I think it warrants just a one-liner sort of highlighting what Shelley said, which is showcase that your layoff was part of a larger movement. It was not performance related. And then after a few months, sort of show what you've done. If you went and traveled the world, talk about how those learnings impact what you would want to do next. So just a brief section that sort of shows that. The other thing I tell people is on LinkedIn, it seems like in search, you sometimes get dinged for having an end date. And so what I tell people to do, certainly in those first months, is to keep the experience listed as current, but then what you can do is in the job title, you can have a little parentheses at the end that says, role ended January 2024. That way the human being knows that you are no longer there, but the algorithm doesn't penalize you for that. To answer the question about the photos, I would stay away from including a photo on your resume, on your cover letter, unless you are in it's a role like an actor or a dancer or something where your looks are what determines the job. A lot of companies are concerned about following fair hiring practices. They don't want to give any indication that there's any bias in the system, and so having a picture on there would hurt them. So take it off. But then, ironically, you do need to have a headshot on your LinkedIn profile, and by not having one, it sort of raises questions for people as to why you don't have one. So no on the resume, yes on the LinkedIn profile. The second question was about length, resume length. Is that right? Okay, so my rule of thumb, and I'm sure Shelley and Edith can attest to, the answer often is it depends on your situation, but by and large, if someone has been doing the same exact role for many, many years, or they have, less than 5 years of experience, then I try to keep it to 1 page. And then I'm willing to go longer. Usually I stick to 2 pages by employing really tight writing, focusing on synopsizing experience that's longer than it's after 15 years. But I will go into a 3rd page if the person's super senior, targeting C-suite roles. Sometimes you do need to go into that 3rd page, or sometimes there are additional materials or an addendum that you need to include. I've written for people that have done a lot of presentations and written a lot of articles, and they want a media section, or they were in mergers and acquisition and they need a deal sheet. And so that 3rd page often can be used for that.
All right, I think that's it for questions, unless anyone has a last one here before we call it a day. Any last questions for the panel?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. This is Cynthia Fischel from Colorado. So I've been having a number of interviews where I have almost all the tools, but there's like maybe 2 tools or 1 tool that they really want. And even though I always learn about 5 to 10 tools in each job I've ever had, and I'm in technology, but I'm in digital marketing and launch campaigns and product launches. And I tell them, hey, I just come up to speed accordingly. I just learn. I love continuous learning. It seems to be something that's holding me back. Is there any other suggestions in terms of how you respond if you don't have 1 or 2 tools in their list of, 10 tools?
So Cynthia, I'm sorry that that's happening to you. And, you know, the reality is that in most jobs, when you come to it, you're going to have to learn new tools anyway. They're going to even bring on new tools while you're there. So that's a learning opportunity. I mean, the best suggestion I can have for you is to certainly talk about the tools that you have, but I would also talk about any tools that you know that are similar, that kind of are in the same family of tools, to have them understand that you do understand kind of how those tools work, for that. And then the only other thing I can suggest is what would be your plan to learn that particular tool if you really just do not have any experience in that. So kind of how you would get yourself up to speed. That's my suggestions on how you might be able to answer that.
Thank you. I've done that 3rd one. I appreciate that reinforcement.
I just want to add something quick to that as well, because we do place a lot of marketers. One of the things you may want to do, and you can sort of illustrate this on your LinkedIn, is to show that you have, a history of lifelong learning, that you're always up to date. So for example, GA4 just came up with Google, right? For one of the marketing tools you need to know. Having that certificate and adding it onto your LinkedIn, and then speaking to the fact that you're always engage in the newest tools that are coming out. You're learning them as quickly as possible. You're a lifelong learner, that you do that outside of work as well, and just demonstrate that to the employer. And then they'll realize that, okay, she can learn this one as well, right? I think just showing that you are very quick to grasp things and that you're engaging and learning always is definitely a skill set employees are looking for, that you're not just sitting idly by and stagnant with your skills, right? So that's maybe something to highlight when you're talking to them.
Okay, John, and that's in reference to having tools that are specific to digital marketing, not necessarily getting like a teaching license or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's job specific skills that the employer wants, like you need to have your PM BOC for project management, or you need to have experience, for example, in mental health or in hospitals, right? If you're marketing to healthcare or medical pharma, you need to know the rules regarding marketing those products, right? So in many cases, you can learn that quickly, but I think it's really just letting them know that you are learning, you are always engaged in being abreast of all the latest trends that are coming up. So one thing we hear from a lot of marketers and a lot of employers right now is, do they know how to integrate AI into our business, right? So I think if you haven't learned a lot about AI tools, then learning them and being able to speak to implementation, that kind of thing. So regardless of what it is, some are must-haves and some are nice-to-haves, right? So I think just sort of acknowledging the difference in which ones you need for sure, which ones you can sort of demonstrate that you're learning and are open to learning, right?
Awesome.
You're in marketing, would love to connect and talk about that at some point, so no problem.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody, I think that's it for today. I'd like to thank our 3 speakers for coming on and sharing their time with everybody. And we're going to follow this up with a copy of the video sent out to everyone who registered for today's event, followed by a few takeaways and free giveaways we have from all of our speakers. So we have things like interview prep guides, resume guides, and templates, and so on. All that will be coming over the next 2 to 3 weeks. It'll be a 4-email sequence, I believe, that will be coming to you with all of this free info. So I hope it helps you with your search. We appreciate everyone coming today and wish everyone good luck with their job search. Hopefully it's a quicker search because of today's help. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.